Hey guys, it's Paul Rinaldi. I wanted to learn a bit more about who actually uses lean startups. It sounds like a great idea. There's some really great principles from lean startup, but I wasn't sure if it's practice. And so I invited Jay Dietenberger here to talk a bit about lean and if it's used.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for that invitation. I really appreciate it. One of the reasons that I thought this would be incredibly powerful to do is you and other new talent coming into the market area who are looking at doing startups like this are prime examples of the talent not only do we want to nurture in Milwaukee, but to keep here in Milwaukee. And I think it's an absolutely great question. A lot of the innovation programming that's going on in Milwaukee you're a part of. And so when you threw the question out there about what lean entrepreneurship is, it's one of the areas that I teach as both a college instructor as well as an executive consultant. That is one of the two of the very many hats I wear in the area. It is incredibly utilized. It's never a guarantee of success for startup, but when you look at the modalities of options for selecting how to basically benchmark a startup and what kind of models to use, lean entrepreneurship is one of the most successful. Again, it never really guarantees success, nor do any of the models, but it's one of the more successful models to follow in launching an entrepreneurial endeavor.
People always think of Google or Amazon and other places like that, but those are really large companies, and there's probably small companies, right, that have practiced lean. Or could you give an example?
There's multiples, and in fact, a lot of the companies that you just mentioned not only utilized tenets of the model, but also borrowed from other models. Um, Eric Reese, depending how you say his name, which continent you're from, is one of the main founders of this modality. And there's a long list on his website of successful companies that have utilized this model. There's other resources on the internet as well. SteveBlank.com does a lot in this area. What Stanford has done around the D School, there's a lot of documented success here around design thinking and its overlay with lean entrepreneurship. Out of Harvard is the model by Kim and Mauburn. Forgive me, I'm not certain that that one's out of Harvard. It's taught at Harvard. But Kim and Mauburn have put a significant amount of effort into another way of looking at startup and strategy success. There's so many different models that each one of them, if you go to their websites, they do have a list of example companies that have been started successfully and or pivoted successfully utilizing their model.
I also heard from a friend in Pittsburgh that it's practiced not only at early stage for startups, but it's also maybe more practiced in late stage. And I'm not sure what the difference would be if you also think that's true.
It, it's hard to map when you're talking about going through the various models of startup. When you're talking about seed to development to launching an idea to building to growing to exiting to pivoting, all of that, there's various ways of applying each of these models to each of those stages. And it isn't about just blanketly putting a model out there. It is also about that good kind of coaching along the way of people who have utilized the model, who have worked the model, and also kind of understanding the reasoning behind the tenets of what they've put into the model. Again, no model is going to guarantee success, but the application of a model in the appropriate way and with good guidance along the way can really accelerate that potentiality for growth, that potentiality for pivoting from a poorer direction or a direction that an organization might be going. So it really depends on what stage, what tenets are being applied. There's no blanket one size fits all. But if you compare the relative success over time that the models have put out there versus those kinds of organizations that have done it without some kind of applied model, the relative frequency of success has been much more documented on the applied application of the model than without.
Sure. So it sounds like it's effective, but you just have to know when to use it. And that may be a whole other conversation, and maybe even just more practicing and examples of it.
Well, it's also one of the reasons that so many accelerators, when it comes to these kinds of dialogues, um, are successful in their approaches because they have models that they utilize, they have access to venture, they have access to coaches, and specifically vertical stack coaches, and coaches who have a lot of vertical depth across multiple categories. These kinds of models applied really do lend themselves very well to the potentiality of success. And the reason I keep saying potentiality is, again, there are no guarantees. It really is about how one applies the learnings, applies the mentoring that's provided, the business decisions that are made, the strategic decisions that are made for a future focus, and a lot of operational and tactical decisions that are made at kind of in place as one is executing that strategy. So there's definitely a great impact that these models can provide. It really is about learning them in the context specific situations to the type of organization that's attempting to be moved forward or pivoted along the way. That's why you find so many different accelerators and classes in this regard, is to help demonstrate what, for example, is in the book that you're reading, when and how to apply it along the way. But as a good first start, most certainly that book has been a really great starter for a number of organizations.
What do you mean by vertical coaching or having a vertical perspective?
One of
Is
the
that
right for great question. One of the terms that's utilized across multiple industries are their verticals. What are their specific verticals? Tech, insurance, manufacturing, healthcare. Those are sometimes referred to as verticals inside of an organization. Sometimes they're referred to as department specific or practice specific areas. So the verticals.
so an industry or particular like types of products or
It could,
services?
well, depending on kind of product, you could talk about a vertical. What it means is when you're stacking layer upon layer of a very similar content expertise, such as technology or engineering or healthcare, or if you're talking about a specific product line, that can be a vertical that has multiple brand extensions. And when an extension deviates so much from its original, that possibly becomes its own vertical. So it's more of a phrase used generically across multiple deep dive products, content knowledges, disciplines in academia. You might refer to it as majors. It really depends on where the deep dive information focus is. So that's what they mean by vertical. And sometimes horizontal is meant when there's a broad-based application of knowledge across each of those at various levels. And what Eric is talking about in the book that you're reading, as I understand it, as I've learned it across time, is that it can be applied across multiple verticals, but there are caveats along the way specific to how it's implemented. And he covers that in the book, on his website, and then coaches, mentors, and otherwise along the way would add and lend more information there, as well as successful entrepreneurs, as well as entrepreneurs who have possibly not been as successful, but have had good learning along the way.
I think I understood most of that. Uh, Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to answer some of these questions, and I think we'll have another conversation sometime about more practical things as well.
Sounds good. Paul, to you and all of the other younger talent in our area that are reaching for the stars, please continue to be amazing, and really know that we need you here in Milwaukee, and so proud of all of the accomplishments that you're putting into the area here, as well as all of the other students and up and coming talent that are following with you.